City of Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission meeting, recorded Tuesday, May 7, 2019.
All right, I have 4 o'clock. I will call to order the Tuesday, May 7th meeting of the Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission, and I will ask Leanne to please call the roll.
Carlson?
I'm here.
Kirschling?
Here.
Moore? Here. Ostrowski?
Present.
And Westcott.
I'm here too. Item 2 on our agenda this afternoon is the annual election of a commission president, secretary, and the appointment of liaisons. As my colleagues are aware, the administrative policies for the standing rules of the Police and Fire Commission require that each May the commission elects a president and a secretary to serve as the presiding officers for the next term of the commission, which runs from May of 2019 through May of 2020. With that said, I will accept nominations for the position of commission president.
Mr. President, I'd like to put in nomination Gary Westcott for another term as president of Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission.
I'll second it.
Are there any other nominations? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Is this where I vote no, Joe? Thank you, colleagues. I appreciate the confidence, the vote of confidence. I would like to nominate, if I may, Robert Ostrowski, who's been doing a great job as our secretary, and with the additional duties of reviewing the monthly bills for the police, fire, and ambulance services, to serve as another term in the role of secretary for the Police and Fire Commission. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Kirschling. Are there any other nominations? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Congratulations, Robert. With that said, I would like to make the following appointments of commission liaisons for the term of 2019 to 2020. Commissioner Kirschling, after discussion, has consented to continue to be the standing liaison to the fire department. And Chief Finn, thank you, Joseph. And you are reappointed to that. I'm going to appoint Commissioner Jerry Moore as the new liaison to the police department. Former Alderman, current Commissioner Moore, is going to take over the role held by Ron Carlson for a couple of years. And I'm going to appoint Ron Carlson, Leanne, as our Commissioner at Large. Our Commissioner at Large, in the last year, we certainly have seen a number of very special projects, very time-consuming projects that Ron has done with style and elegance, but it has consumed an awful lot of his time, including EMS, and a little bit later our report on combined dispatch services. So with that said, I would like to appoint Commissioner Kirschling as fire liaison, Commissioner Moore as police liaison, and Commissioner Carlson will serve as the commission's commissioner at large for the next term. We don't have on the agenda an opportunity for public comment, but prior to the meeting I was approached by Brandy. She'd like to make a short statement to the commission. Now, since it's not on the agenda, I'm going to need consensus from the commission to permit Brandy to make a short statement to the commission. I'm inclined to support her request under the following condition. Because it is not a noticed agenda item, there will be no discussion, no questions. If anything is raised in her presentation that is worthy of an agenda item in the future, I would so do so. Do I have consensus with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Brian, do you have the floor?
Despite common perception, I'm not comfortable in front of groups, so pardon me. My name is Brandy McCuskey. I'm the editor-in-chief for the Point Plover Metro Wire. A lot of you are aware that the local media scene has been decimated in recent years due to issues not germane to this body. About 3 years ago, we had about a dozen news reporters serving the Point and Plover area. Today, there are 2 professionally trained journalists working in this community. It means less news is getting to the public, but it has also created a very wide gap between local agencies and the media that does remain. Our job is made unnecessarily far more difficult by social media, in particular, Facebook. Facebook is an unreliable vehicle that is a breeding ground for misinformation, speculation, bullying, and possible removal by Facebook itself. This happened recently when someone in Texas posted the Declaration of Independence to his news feed, but Facebook marked it as hate speech and it was removed. Nevertheless, Facebook is still used by local police and fire agencies for distributing newsworthy items to the public, often before or sometimes simultaneously to notifying local media outlets, which makes it impossible for reporters to do their jobs. By the time we've tracked down the relevant person for follow-up questions or other details, take a photo, or place it into context with additional information, the original post, while not a complete picture of events, has already been shared some 80 times or more, making our work meaningless. In some cases, the media is bypassed entirely, leaving us completely unaware of a newsworthy item. By reporting the news yourselves, you are training the public to rely on Facebook, an unreliable platform, rather than professional news reporters to cover the news. This has long-term effects on communication, which are already evident. Facebook users no longer seek additional information and often never get the full story. Users rely often on third-party comments and assumptions in the comment thread, which go unverified, and sometimes a post doesn't even show up in someone's newsfeed for days or weeks. You're teaching the public to avoid traditional media, which means fewer readers, and it gives the perception that traditional media is no longer relevant or trustworthy. The media does not have the resources to monitor the dozens of Facebook pages held by local municipal agencies. Yet we regularly work with local law enforcement to dispel rumors or false crimes that are placed on Facebook. It makes no sense to use the same platform as a replacement for the journalists who are trained in reporting news professionally. Imagine the problems that would arise if the tables were turned and if an institution such as the media encouraged the public to take law enforcement, firefighting, and EMS duties into their own hands. We would like to implore this body, in the strongest possible sense, to encourage local law enforcement and fire agencies to let news reporters report the news. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. And consistent with the ground rule that I laid out there, I'm not going to follow up with questions. We may, however, have our first topic for our Commissioner at Large in the next 30 days, would you review how these practices are done within the units under this Commission's jurisdiction and share that information as part of an agenda item for the month of June? Commissioner Carlson.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. The only other President's report, President. Oh, I'm sorry, Robert.
I have Commissioner Carlson notice this will be an agenda item that anyone can talk on next month.
Correct, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay. The other President's items reports that I wish to just point out here quickly. I think many of you know by now that Commissioner Moore has been reappointed by Mayor Wiesa for a full term. Congratulations. I'm also delighted to report that Alderperson Mary Kneebone, I waited till you got here, has been appointed, officially appointed. Mary is a very regular attendee at the Police and Fire Commission meetings, and we're delighted that you have been appointed officially and formally as that liaison between the Stevens Point Common Council and the Police and Fire Commission for the full term. Congratulations, Alderperson. The only other thing I want to add here has really nothing to do with the Police and Fire Commission, so if the commissioners will indulge me for just 1 minute. I was unable to make Tom Schrader's going away because of what you may have all witnessed as I hobbled in here today. But I just want to publicly, for our record in minutes, commend Park and Recreation Director Tom Schrader. Tom served this community. We've seen many pieces in the various journalistic outpourings and community outpourings about Tom's hard work. I had the honor of working with him for 12 and a half years when I was in the mayor's office. I think Jerry would probably say the same thing. He did a wonderful job for the community, and this community really benefited from his stewardship and years of tutelage in the Parks and Recreation area. So with that said, let's move to item 4, the approval of the minutes. Members of the commission, you have the minutes in your packet from April 9th, 2019. What are your wishes?
Yeah, and I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Moore, second by Commissioner Carlson, to approve the minutes as they are submitted to the commission. Are there any comments, suggestions, deletions, corrections? If not, all in favor of approving, please say aye.
Aye.
Both say no. Motion carries. Item number 5 is the confirmation of the bills. Members of the Police and Fire Commission, you have the bills in your packet. Bob, you have reviewed them, signed off on them. You have the first crack at them.
Okay, gentlemen, you will find something different in your packets this time. There is no month-to-date budget results, and that is done for a reason. In my reviewing the Bureau of Bills, the current month values on the monthly did not total up the same as the actual monthly bills. I called downtown to get an explanation, and I guess I didn't go to law school long enough to, when I was selling paint, to understand the explanation. I am looking into it further to get a little bit clearer, but you do have the actual expenditures that I did approve. So looking at the police department, first of all, you see it's for a total of $17,961.74. A good deal of this was on training, nothing really unusual. There was some body armor purchased and stuff like that. I do have a little problem, and I expressed it to the chief, the fact that we pay for snow plowing when sitting right next door. There's a lot of equipment, and the chief explained it very well to me why that's done, and I accept his value, but as a citizen, I have a little problem with that one. Does anybody have any questions on the police bills?
I have a question for Chief Skiba. On that extradition, was that done by the U.S. Marshals?
So that was not actually because of their work and the delay in being able to get them in a timely manner. There are companies now that, working through Portage County Sheriff's Office, we then split the cost of the extradition and cost of getting them back to court.
I was just curious. Thanks.
We gotta get criminals to cooperate, not leave town after they do something. Okay, moving on to the fire department bills. Again, nothing stands out. It's for $14,072.21 for the month. There was some involved in scuba equipment, apparently. That's one big one, and of course, humidifier repair. But a big part of it is, again, technology, software. As you can see up above, there's close to over $6,000 of the monthly expenses are for that. Any questions on the fire department?
No, please
And
continue.
Then lastly, on the ambulance, again, the actual amount, $13,722.11. One big one on there, but I don't think anybody would want to doubt it. It's the refresher courses for the paramedics, which represents half of the month's expenses. And I see they split the bill for the humidifier repair between fire and ambulance, which seems to be very fair to me. So any questions on the ambulance bills?
Are there any questions on any of the bills that have been reviewed by Commissioner Ostrowski for the fire department, police department, or EMS? If not, I will move approval of the bills as they have been reviewed by Commissioner Ostrowski and submitted to the commission for this date.
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Kirschling. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item number 6 is the review of the combined Portage County dispatch. I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Carlson in just a moment, but to set the stage, those of you who are regular attendees at these meetings know that we have had some analysis of the communications center and some specific items that we have discussed as a commission on and off over the years. It's also appropriate as the city of Stevens Point approaches 6 years in August of this year when signing over the dispatch services to the Portage County Communications Center. As we have asked both of our fire chief, police chief, and Commissioner Carlson as part of his duties to take a look at this, it's only appropriate after almost 6 years to take a look at the service agreement. It has been almost 6 years in August since all of the dispatching duties were transferred to Portage County. It's appropriate after this time to go back, take a look at that contract, take a look at what has worked in the last 5.5 years plus, and what could use some work moving forward in the future with the combined dispatch service. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Carlson. Ron, if you'd lead this, I'd appreciate it.
All righty, thank you, President Westcott. We have letters from both the FD and the police department that touch on some issues, but it's just an overall general statement without details, and I understand that. The details will be mined as we go along. But I always feel the first step in addressing a problem, if there is a problem, is to get the people talking about it. And that's what I'd like to do. I was telling Chief Skiba that I'd like to contact the head of the dispatch center, Denise, and set up where I can go to the communications board meeting as well. And after that, I'd like to ask her if we could have a sit-down with the parties involved and go from there and start working on what is working and what isn't working. But I think there's enough issues that we need to have open, honest, frank discussion about it. Does
Okay.
that work?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Please
Okay,
continue.
all right.
Please continue.
Yeah, and Chief Skip, if you had just mentioned, I had sent you some questions, the differences between rural dispatching and urban dispatching that you've encountered on the police department?
So, a couple of things that come up quite frequently as policing a municipality as yourself, you're aware that citizens in a more dense populated community environment see law enforcement more frequently, and therefore they have an expectation by default that when they call for law enforcement services, they're going to see them. Where in a rural community out in the county, you don't see a sheriff's deputy frequently. Again, they have miles and miles to cover, not blocks and blocks. And because of that, the default expectation is unless it's an emergency, they're not going to be seeing a deputy. And so similarly, the dispatch mindset is then that by default, you are not sending law enforcement to the call unless it's requested. And unfortunately, we've encountered times where by that default and problem solving on their own, they are not sending an officer, where later we learn or determine by whether it's a complaint or something posted on Facebook that, why didn't I see a police officer? And so, again, because of the expectation of policing, as an example, you wind up having that. Similarly, in a metropolitan area, you just have a heavier density of calls for service and variety of calls for service. So prior to transferring into dispatch with the county, we had over 200 different codes for cases. So we were able to mine our data and able to allocate resources where we needed them very specifically. Where currently, because that coding, if you will, of the records is set by dispatch and there are less codes available, the coding that once was done at dispatch, now if we wish to fine tune it, our record staff needs to do that. So again, because there are those different processes, and by default, as a county dispatch service, they're going to default to what they know or what they have been doing historically.
I really like that you mentioned the quality of life type calls, because I think those are what make a police department, the quality of life calls. Everybody knows about the murder, the robbery, whatever, but it's the day-to-day things that actually drive a police department. I'm so glad you mentioned that in your letter. And Chief Finn, just a quick snapshot from the fire department's perspective.
We've had issues that have been brought before the COM board, and they started back last October with letters that were answered for a new paging system and CAD integration. I did receive a letter from County Executive Holman. I'm meeting with him tomorrow. Some of it I can't discuss until we get to closed session because it has to do with EMS contract talks. But at the last COM board meeting, I asked that the sheriff and the county exec be put on the agenda to come explain the rules and responsibilities of the COM board. Because when we went through this process, we were told by the COM board communications director, manager, that we had to go through this process. Then when we got there, it was like, no, this doesn't belong here. So what are the roles and responsibilities of it? If this is just an advisory board that was put together to make everyone feel good, when the county and the city combined and we can't do anything, then let's just ban it and we're wasting a whole bunch of time and effort. Or put us under somewhere in the county that can get something done. I mean, they put Pulse Point through without a problem because the county wanted it, but it was under something, under emergency management, was overseen by the county board, and they can get stuff through. So that meeting was changed to July 9th, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, that the sheriff and county exec should be there. Hopefully, we can get some of these issues resolved. I can't take full credit for the letter that's in front of you, because I'm gonna be honest with you, we plagiarized the beginning from the chief, because he did such a, chief of police, because he did such a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, we noticed.
No one would ever notice if you
Yeah,
didn't
I-
say anything.
Well, I'm gonna give credit where credit's due,
Yes.
and, you know, I'm not gonna reinvent the wheel.
If I may ask, Chief, were you done? I'm sorry, go ahead. No,
I
go ahead.
think it was brought up at the COM board that not one person has successfully passed training since 2017
Training is what?
as a ComTech,
A dispatcher.
a dispatcher,
Okay.
correct.
Since when?
2017.
Do we know why?
Are you talking about to enter for hiring
When you
purposes?
get hired-
Right, yep.
Go through a training period. Since 2017, not one person has successfully completed the
Yeah.
training. Either they quit, they didn't pass the training. I don't know the answers to that. I know it's a problem for the comm center. As a comm board, we asked if we could help,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, no. They keep hiring people, and I don't know the answer, but they are now, I believe, 5 short of where their low end's supposed to be, not what the study says where they should have been when they combined. I believe that's in the letter that Chief Skibbett so eloquently wrote. They're supposed, is that 18, is that what the study said?
The initial number was 18, yes.
Okay.
But is my memory incorrect? Wasn't that number supposed to grow? I mean,
Yes.
this is a number that was forecast in 2013,
This,
or do I have that wrong?
So this number of 18 would have been the original number combining the county
The city
and the
dispatchers and the
cities,
county
correct.
dispatchers.
But the study, as I recall it, had identified actually 24 if they were going to
thought-
provide the 2 dispatcher coverage for county and for city each, so 4,
Mm-hmm.
and then the supervisory need that a dispatch service or center would have.
All right, let me see if, can I distill this down just a little bit before I give it back to you?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, I can't
does-
finish.
I'm sorry, what's that? If you're not
just-
done, no, you go ahead. If I don't want to interrupt
Well, as the Police and Fire Commission, Chief Skibba and myself report to you for emergency services. All right, this is a concern of mine, and I know it's a concern of Chief Skibba. Let's be honest, the county took the money, they took the tax levy, and we're not receiving the service that we deserve. And that's not good to the citizens of Stevens Point. And I don't know if it's this body or the city council, but something has to be done.
I just think since 2013, this review or discussion, dialogue, whatever you want to call it, has been a long time coming. Probably should have been done maybe earlier, but we'll get her fixed.
The agreement was signed May 23rd of 2013.
Let me see that. Let me just, I need to do a couple of real basic things here. I want to make sure everybody understands when Chief Skibba and Chief Finn are referring to the COM board. Does everybody know who, I don't even know what the membership of the COM board is. I see a couple of commissioners going, yeah, I know what it is, but I don't, Bob, Marty, the COM board, who is the COM board? Who comprises the COM board? And what
It
happened to
is-
my English ability here?
It is the fire chief of Stevens Point, or designee, the police chief of Stevens Point, or designee.
Okay,
It is the EMS Association, the Fire Chiefs Association, the county sheriff has a rep, and Plover PD has a rep, Plover Fire has a rep. But you gotta understand what the COM board rules are. No matter what they do, it says right in there, the sheriff has last say.
Mm-hmm.
So if they don't like it, the sheriff says no, it's no.
But this was created for that purpose, wasn't it? 'Cause I
Yeah.
remember that was a big sticking point.
Right, and that's why I asked at the last meeting, let's get the sheriff and the county exec, and what are the roles and responsibility of this board? Again, let's stop wasting our time. We, the city, police and fire, emergency services, ambulance have concerns. And I do believe that, it sounds like I'm attacked, but they do a good job in what they try to do a good job with the people they have. It's just, I don't know the answer to this.
How many dispatchers do they have today?
13?
Depending on if you're looking at those in training or, and so not to.
I'm talking, I can sit here certified on my own and be a dispatcher.
I would be giving you a ballpark then.
That's fine.
I don't have the last number. I believe that they have 13. I believe 2 more are in training. But again, at that number of personnel, they also have only so many trainers, and I can tell you, and much like Chief Finn would tell you, you can only train so many people and be careful with your trainers that you're not burning them out. And again, they are in a very high-stress position. I would contend that many of the day-to-day issues that we see are symptoms, actually, not intentional, but symptoms of staffing shortages. And so I think that will come out soon. And then there are those, then the larger discussion of decision-making and who finally casts that last vote in the research that you'll do, Commissioner Carlson.
Ron, do you want to continue?
No,
or-
I'm just ready to rock.
Well, again, I'm a little confused. They have 13 today. The number was closer to 17 or 18
It's,
when we merged
it started at
6 years ago.
It started at 18.
Okay, it was supposed to grow from 18 to a more robust 24, 25, is that correct?
Over time, yes, and again, I don't believe that there was anything, an actual identified timeline on that, but a study recommending here's the number to be most effective at.
All right, from my own perspective, in the city's heyday, and we may have to rely on Commissioner Carlson too, when it was just city dispatch of police, fire, and EMS, how many dispatchers did you have working just for the city of Stevens Point?
We had 8.
All right, so with only 5 more, they're trying to cover an entire county.
Yes.
Well, I'm not an emergency expert here, but that's got to be problematic, and just to say the least. Commissioners, go ahead, sir.
What I would say or add, and in some respects, again, ideally you have 2 covering a particular side, so 2 covering city for the
Right.
various calls, because just the volume of calls, and then you'd have 2 minimally covering the county and emergency services. Understandably then, as the shortages go, you start getting to 1 dispatcher on each, and then you have a floater, them trying to have an ear for any and all of the additional calls that can create issues. So, and I am sure once, again, it's looked at more, they've started to identify when are the busiest times and adjusting scheduling as best as possible. And I know that they have used a lot of overtime to backfill, so it's not purely, they only have 12 at the 2080 a year, and that's it. They have been doing, but again, when you are that short, things are gonna have to get adjusted, and we've seen that, whether it's requests for our records to pick up extra assignments or things like that. But yes, they are running short-staffed.
And to show you how it's progressed, when I started in 1978, police officers dispatched. 1 police officer was the dispatcher for the city of Stevens Point. Then I want to say 80 or 81, we hired 2 civilian dispatchers. That number grew to 8, as Chief Skibba said, and the volume's there, the work is there. And while this popped into my head, maybe I could ask you later, but I'll probably forget. How is, people used to call in for overnight parking permission on the street. They'd call dispatch, dispatcher would log that, so the police officers wouldn't issue a ticket to that person. Now that's no longer being done because of the volume, right? So people are doing it online, is that correct?
So what I can tell you is that transitioned with, I do believe, as the shortages grew. And again, if you look at the contract, it does say that this is a side discussion topic, but They took on that service for us for several years. As I think the call volume increased of calls for service, plus parking, plus shortages of staff, they started talking to us about we can no longer handle this. The council was brought into this discussion along with what can we do, and it was determined not that long ago to allow for overnight parking, and then we wound up making it an electronic access to do that.
Does that cause problems at all?
We have not found it
Oh,
to be extremely difficult. There are those occasional, again, because it is computerized. We have those individuals at 2:30 in the morning that have trouble with that.
Typing? Yes. Okay.
Commissioner Ostrowski, you've been very patient. You have the floor.
Yes, this is ironic, and I don't know if it's ironic or intentional. This discussion came up at emergency medical EMS meeting just recently, and a couple of people that represent the county were just as frustrated about it, because in the 4 years I've been attending those meetings, almost every single month that I can remember I attended, the dispatch shortage has been mentioned. And in her defense, one big strong point is the fact that people burn out during training. They didn't realize they were going to have to monitor as much as they're monitoring at one time, or that they weren't just going to take a call. They were going to be on that call till services got there because somebody's having a baby, the house is on fire, and then the neighbors are butting in. I mean, so, there's a lot of things happening, and quite frankly, she's having one devil of a time for finding people that can handle that. So she's having a lot of washouts during the time period, and I've heard this repeatedly. The other thing is the fact that the first time I heard it at this last meeting, Mary, you were there, was the fact that other counties are stealing dispatchers. It's a statewide problem, and other counties are offering more money than what Portage County is offering. And so they're losing people, they're training them, and then they're getting their experience, and then they're going bye-bye to someplace else. So, now I'm not defending the problem, because I think this problem should have been addressed a long time ago. But this was words, and Mary can vouch for me, this was brought up, and I think Supervisor Pataki was going to take it forward, or he was very interested in it anyways, of getting it to the county board.
There's so much to unpack here.
Yeah,
Let me see if I can unpack a little bit more of this. Included in future research for both the fire chief, the police chief, and Commissioner Carlson, who's, I think, is at-large appointment he may regret within 6 months here.
He's signing resignation right here.
I certainly would be very interested in knowing how many joint dispatch operations have this form of governance where you have a comm board that, as Chief Finn eloquently pointed out, appears to be strictly advisory in context only. And if I understand what I heard from the chiefs, ultimately all decisions relative to this belong to the sheriff. I would like to know the other counties that have joint dispatch operations, how they manage that. Now, I'm aware of how one or two do it in southern Wisconsin, and they have a governing board with basically regulatory authority is assigned by their jurisdictions, so that when problems are presented by the fire chief, the police chief, EMS chief, they can be dealt with and in an effective manner. I would also be very interested in knowing why we can't seem to attract and retain dispatchers. I mean, I hear what Commissioner Ostrowski and Carlson and the chiefs have said, but I also have to believe that those are conditions that are uniform in any dispatch center in the state of Wisconsin or in the country. Well, how do the rest of the country and nation staff up their operations with quality people? I'd like to get some answers to that. Bob, I think you mentioned it before. If I could you have, Leanne, would you circulate a copy of that contract that was signed by the city in 2013 to the commission? That was negotiated, if I'm reading that contract correctly, strictly by the city administration at the time. And really, if I'm wrong here, correct me, because I wasn't around in 2013, I was somewhere else. But it appears to me, did the commission, Police and Fire Commission, have any role in the creation of this operating contract between the city of Stevens Point?
From my
and Portage
recollection,
County?
not much,
You know,
but it wasn't a lot.
Yeah, that's a serious, Corey, do you remember with Corey Laddick? And Corey, if you go over here, we're blessed to have our comptroller here. I see it was just signed by the mayor. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Item
Okay,
signature.
got it.
What was the, can you state the
Well,
question?
I'm just, maybe a little background for me. I see that the commission president at the time signed off on this, but Commissioner Kirschling's recollection was that the city's commission had limited input into the structure of this contract. Can you help us there at all? Do you remember, Corey? And if you don't, that's
Well,
okay.
and that was, actually, I came on board kind of in the middle of when that contract was being put together, so I didn't really see it from start to finish.
Okay.
I do know that at least one of the closed sessions that the city had to discuss the contract with Joint Dispatch, that at that time was Dave Schleiss was the president of the PFC, and I do remember that he was in attendance. So I think that there was some level of involvement there, but I'm not sure if it was just the commission president or.
Okay. And it's not my desire to relitigate the whole thing from 2013. I'm more interested in saying, well, all right, here's what has worked in the last 5.5 years. Here's what we're comfortable with. You reported one on parking. We have a number of items that have been identified for the commission by the fire chief and the police chief. The radio and paging policy inconsistencies in fire and EMS. Bob, if I get this wrong, correct me, as the chief has cited to us, the communication center is going to change paging policies without notifying the Stevens Point Fire Department's chain of command. The items that are outlined here are concerns, serious concerns, not only for the fire chief, but for the Police and Fire Commission. The police chief has eloquently outlined a couple of areas: access to records, ongoing requests for standardized responses to quality of life calls, and general response to citizen complaints when you didn't know the complaint had been made in the first place, but it went to the comm center. So I think to move this process forward, as we frequently have talked about at the commission level, let's identify what's working. We're 5.5 years into this. What's working for fire, what's working for police, EMS, and let's identify areas that we need to address moving forward. And I think creating some type of a formalized regulatory body between the commission, the city of Stevens Point, and Portage County is a very logical approach to this. I mean, with real governing authority. Of course, we have to be careful because the Police and Fire Commission can't assign its authority away under state statute, but we can certainly place a commissioner within this regulatory body and work with the sheriff and comm department. I'd also like to see, as I've shared with the commission, Commissioner Carlson and our chiefs, just to reiterate, there's a lot of issues here that we've unpacked, but I have to believe that how are other units governed? How are other dispatch centers able to attract quality dispatchers, train them and retain them? I mean, I don't believe for 1 minute that, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I happen to believe that other dispatch centers around the state of Wisconsin can attract people and train them so that there are sufficient staff members on duty. Liaison Nebone, yes. Mary, if you go over there so people can hear you, please. Thank you.
Mary Nebone, 5718 Sandpiper Drive, District 7, Alder. One of the things that Denise mentioned also is that only 4% of the population has got the ability to work in a dispatch center, to multitask and have the decision-making ability to handle the kind of stress that they can handle. And as Commissioner Ostrowski said, the last meeting, they had somebody quit halfway through the training. It's not unusual. I don't think it's a lack of applicants as much as it is the kind of skill set that you have to work there. So when you've got a really small pool, competition gets really tough and people start calling and saying, how much do you pay? Compared to, well, Green Bay pays dispatchers this much, how much do you pay? And they start to be able to demand the jobs rather than the job-seeking people. So for what it's worth, another little insight on why it's so hard to get people.
Well, and Mary, that's a really good point, thank you. I'm hoping that our research will uncover some of these things. If it's a salary issue, if it's a training issue, if it's whatever issue it is. Any other questions, Robert, go ahead, sir.
I don't want to blame all this on the communications center. A lot of the issues that we've had in the 4 years I've been chief is with county IT.
Okay.
I don't know how big the IT department is, but it's an IT issue, IT issue, IT issue, IT issue. And I don't know how to fix that.
And this is IT that
For the county.
runs through the comm center?
No, the county IT takes care of the comm center.
Okay.
And the county IT does not think very highly of the city. I could tell you that. I've had meetings with them, and it's very well known that when it comes to city stuff, that on the totem pole, we're pretty far down.
Can you give the commission an example of something in IT that should have been addressed or done in the comm center that's a responsibility of county IT that would have improved services to the taxpayers? Can you give me an example of what you're talking about?
So many examples that are addressed in the letter are also in the EMS negotiations.
All right, fair enough, I understand. No, I understand.
So I don't want to comment publicly.
Well,
We're in the process of trying to get a new paging system,
right.
and that's when the Denise from the communication center manager said this is not a comm center issue.
Okay.
And then it went to the county executive. And that's what the meeting's for tomorrow, because we were going through the policies and procedures of the comm board, and it got to the point where, what doesn't go here? Well, then where's it go? We just wasted 6 months of sending letters and waiting,
Mm-hmm.
and then find out it doesn't go here. It goes to the county executive.
Where were you 6 months ago, right? Yeah. Well, you know, please, to my colleagues, I'll defer to any of my commissioners. Our goal here is to say, okay, this is working, how do we improve that? And here's another area we've identified in police operations, fire, or EMS that we feel as a police and fire commission could use improvements or enhancements moving forward for the next 5 years. This is not a, get somebody moment. This is I think it's very appropriate that anytime you're X number of years into an operating contract, you step back and you say what works and what isn't working, or what's working and what can we improve upon. Commissioner Carlson, I'm going to give you the last word on this. Commissioner Moore, Ostrowski, Kirschland, you have anything to add to this before I give it to Commissioner Carlson?
Well, the only thing
Go ahead.
I'd like to say is, remembering what Mary just said a moment ago, you realize you'd have to have 25 applicants to get one person that's capable of handling a job. Now, the other thing which you got to stop and realize, and I was very negative at that meeting until I listened to the statistics. They're operating, trying to get back to the minimum. So these people that are training under excessive pressure. They're not training at 24 people and they're filling in for one. They're lost one, they're down at 23. They want to be at 18, they're down at 13, 14. Now, these people are training, coming in under battlefield conditions instantly. So I think the 4% might even be high that are qualified, because they're not even getting a fair training period.
But, Robert, based on that scenario that you've outlined, they're only going to continue to lose people.
That's exactly right.
And that's an alarming statistic that everybody, based on the scenario
Yep.
as you've outlined it, that's not a growth scenario. That's a scenario for, we're going to continue to lose from this small pool of
It will
13.
get worse.
Can I
Commissioner
ask
Carlson.
Commissioner Ostrowski a question?
Yeah.
Of
At the
course.
next meeting, please ask where they got the survey from and where they're getting their numbers.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in on that. I
Because
understand.
anybody can spew numbers,
Right.
okay? I have yet to see the study that says what you're saying.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it's not true.
Yeah.
Well,
I know dispatchers in 2 different states, so I know that getting qualified dispatchers can happen. It is a very stressful job. And the people that are training are coming in working overtime and working double the amount of time they should be working. I get all of that, okay? But the numbers that keep coming up, I would like to know where they're getting their numbers from.
Well, and that's the point I made. Thank you for reinforcing that, Chief. That was the point that I had made before, that if this was an industry-wide symptom, we'd see it everywhere. And I have a very good contact in the Dane County Dispatch Center, and they've got an army of people down there.
Salary has something to do with it. If you're looking at the whole global thing, I just did a quick Google search.
Okay.
2012, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's roughly 36,000 to 50, let's call it 57,000. So let's bump that up to current, you're at roughly 40,000 to 60,000. You bump that up to $75,000 to $100,000, I bet you wouldn't have the problem.
Right? That's a good point, Joseph. All right, Commissioner Carlson, you have the last word, then we're going to move on.
Well, I'm looking forward to delving into this, but I understand and I heard what both of you said, but I'm along with the fire chief, and it is stressful. We're just going to work to make it better. It's an opportunity to move forward and make it better. Most of the combined dispatch I know have a separate entity that is a board that runs it. You know, it eliminates problems, it makes things cleaner, I guess I would say. But like I said at the outset, the first step in addressing a problem is to get people talking about it, and I think it's time to talk about it.
Yep, good. I would agree with you. All right, I will wait to hear from you when you'd like a future agenda item.
Sure.
Thank you.
2021.
All right, moving on to item 7, Fire Chief's report and EMS report. Chief Finn, you have the floor, sir.
I gotta find it. Give me a second.
It's not memorized?
No, it's not. You got the report, the report, I circled what I really wanted to talk about. Okay. Reports were sent to you. What I really want to talk to you about is Stevens Point Police Department, Fire Department, Plover PD, already started. Actually, Sarah's doing the filming. We're doing a suicide prevention public service announcement. And
Did you get those links from the university? You asked for them, and then I was out sick for a few days. I haven't gone and checked to make sure they were, are you ready to send that video?
no,
All right.
we're working on it.
I'll get you the links.
Okay.
All right.
And
Sarah, you don't have it done yet?
It's not her fault. It's
I know, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
all the fire stuff, so it's the policeman that she's waiting for. I just wanted to make that noted.
Okay.
But I thought that was very important to say, and on the report, any questions? We did work with Greek Life and put on a mock car crash. I think there was 3 different times that we did it with 3 different cars. Showed off our new extrication equipment. Johnson's Towing donated the cars, so it worked well. And any other questions on the reports?
I have none. Any commissioners have questions for
Neither do I.
Chief Finn?
I just had one
ahead,
question
Mark.
that a citizen asked me. Why do we have a black fire truck? Is this a new trend in coloring? You know, the new truck is half black, half red. I didn't have an answer for the people.
It's red
Looks
with a
red to
black
me.
top.
Yeah, but the.
You have to ask the truck committee on why they picked that color. I'm not getting blamed for that one.
I was just kind of wondering, because I never thought about it, but I did have a person stop me on the street and said, what the heck, we got a black truck?
No, it's red. It's just got a black top.
I just wondered if there was a new trend, because I know for a while it was that fluorescent lime yellow or whatever it was for a while, and is there a reason
Well,
changing?
lime green was usually when you had federal money involved because
Right.
that's what they
Oh,
use in
okay.
airports and federal funding.
But this isn't part of a trend, it's just somebody picked it that way.
Well, our next one's gonna be the same color because it looks good.
More importantly, you're satisfied with the performance and function of the truck. That's all that's really important, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll move approval of the fire chief's report.
I'll second
Thank-
that.
thank
Second by Commissioner Kirschling.
I don't think that was a good.
I'm moving.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Note to follow up with Bob Finn. Okay. Item number 8, the chief of police's report. Marty?
Well, I'm left wondering if some people on your truck committee want to be cops.
The reason I didn't want to take wind is because that's a Chicago color.
Got it. Well, it's a good color. Again, as Chief Finn brought out, the suicide prevention this month is mental health awareness. Again, speaking to our CIT strengths, getting a lot of commendations for what Officer Radzik is doing out in the community. As you can see, we did have quite a few commitments this past month, unfortunately. Still working with individuals in our community. This time of the year, dealing more with the homeless who are camping out, trying to work with them, getting them located in, quite frankly, appropriate housing as best we can. And that always, the numbers increase during the summer. It's just Wisconsin's a little bit more livable, if you will. Aside from that, notes of interest, listed one of the canine involvements here assisting with a Plover armed robbery. Just to point out that our dogs are not just for drug searches. They come in handy for a lot of things, and this is one of the great successes from that. And then, as you see, some of the training that we wound up hosting here, doing several ride-alongs with the Criminal Justice Student Program, along with co-hosting a LGBTQ training here with the Crisis Center. And so, again, this building is definitely working out to be able to bring training in, co-hosting, and just, again, providing more training for our officers, more diverse training.
Are there questions for Chief Skibba? Yes, sir.
Chief, the adult crossing guard, that's been on the thing a couple months. Obviously, we're going into school letting out, so we don't no need for it pretty soon, but is there any progress going towards that? Does the police department actually hire the crossing guard, or how does it go about?
So yes, the police department does the hiring, and actually we now employ, I believe it's 3 during the summer for summer school, and that's been for several years. Unfortunately, this is a pattern that many police departments are facing. Again, whether you want to say it's the lack of volunteerism in a community, our crossing guard, adult crossing guards are just aging out of it. I mean, we have some that are in their 80s. And for the small moments of time that you need them, it's difficult. So we are assessing all of our crossings to determine which ones are truly necessary, which ones do we have where there's just a student crossing, are there some things that we can do? We're working with the school bus garage to see, are there some things, because the buses aren't as full as they used to be. More parents are transporting. So we are looking at a lot of different options this summer to see what we can do.
Is this a specific crossing that's in need? Is it a certain crossing?
Well, this particular person filled a particular crossing, but then we tend to talk to all of the guards to see, is this spot closer to where you live? And so again, all of that gets taken in consideration to make it more fillable.
Chief, I have a couple of questions, if I can follow up.
Go ahead.
At a recent commission meeting, you provided a very brief overview of a drug meth issue in this area. It was a rather alarming report. Is there anything that has changed? Have you noticed any, does it continue to increase the problem exponentially with time? Is it kind of hit a plateau where it's stable? And if you need some time to do research, I know I'm catching you off, out of the blue on this.
I can tell you our staff is as busy as ever
Okay.
as it's dealing with it. We are utilizing all the resources we can to the point where our MEG group in central Wisconsin has received money not only just for drug enforcement and all that includes, but specifically dealing with meth. And so again, where we can utilize our officers, we are still working with the council, looking at our budgets to see if there's a way to fill the drug officer position this year. That was approved. But again, we're still early in this year, and of course, a person doesn't want to jump out ahead too soon and then overspend the budget, obviously being fiscally responsible.
Well, you read my mind. I was going to ask you if there had been any new traction in the area of filling that position earlier. Unless I have it wrong, I feel there is a commitment from the council to for sure fill it in 2020. I think there is I think the commission is in agreement that there is a very serious need for this drug officer, if not more, in the community. We consented to a postponement, but has there been any, and I appreciate it is only May, but we'll be talking about budgets pretty quick, right, Corey?
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess to that point, what I can tell you is, obviously, understandably, in the position the comptroller treasurer is in, until closer in those July, August months, will he be able to provide the city with a better understanding where the operational dollars are. If in fact it appears that it's supportive of that in 2020, we do believe with the holding off of our past hiring, we may be able to start up a person, if nothing else, because of our training process being almost 4 months lag time. If we truly even want to start a drug officer, another one in January of 2020,
Right.
we really need to be looking at hiring somebody in October, November.
Right.
So again, working with the comptroller treasurer's office and seeing where the dollars are.
And I appreciate that. Other commission questions? Go ahead.
I do. And again, Chief Skibba, you may not have the answer to this one, but with all the talk about Health and Human Services being so understaffed, overworked, just as many departments are, a question popped into my head. How many of these commitments every month are, I don't want to say repeat offenders, but are the same person, but only over again? Are we committing Joe Smith 3 times in 2019? Or, are they the same people that we're recycling? Or are these
80
new
different
ones?
people.
Right, yeah.
All right.
I couldn't give you a
and I
specific
didn't
percentage,
expect,
but
yeah.
what I can tell you is, and a little bit of from your past experience, are there more people in mental health crisis? Yes. Or being identified, so they're becoming known to us because people are realizing, okay, it doesn't have to be being stigmatized. So they are coming out, they are seeking help. We probably are seeing on average a commitment of a person maybe 1, 2, even 3 times, and then starting to see where we have traction, where we have enough with them in the courts with crisis plans put together, because again, we need to understand that individual, understand what their needs are, what their triggers are, get that crisis plan involved. That's where we have Officer Radzik, and as well as the rest of our officers able to implement that crisis plan and then keep from that 3rd, 4th, and subsequent committal. But unfortunately, sadly for that individual, they may have to experience a committal a couple of times before all of the government inertia works to support them.
Right.
Chief, most of these detentions, where are the people detained?
Some go here to St. Mike's, some go to Marshfield, Norwood, some go to Winnebago, depending on age, depending on level of violence, depending on their medical. All of those factors play in.
Are there, excuse me, are there other questions for Chief Skibba?
Good
If
answer.
not, I'll entertain a motion to approve his
Move to
report.
approve his report.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Kirschling. All in favor of accepting the chief's report, placing it on file, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Item 9, the commission will adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 16, 1985, 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. This will be for an update on the EMS ambulance contract negotiations. May I have a motion to adjourn into closed session, please?
So moved.
Commissioner Carlson, seconded by
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Kirschling. Thank you, Joseph. Leanne, would you please call the roll?
Carlson?
Yes.
Kirschling?
Yes.
Moore?
Aye.
Ostrowski?
Yes.
Westcott?
Yes, okay, we're going to close into executive session.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.